In a war-torn city, Hassan, the gravedigger, discovers an unlikely hero, a street dog named Amal. Together, they embark on a perilous mission to save lives amidst the chaos of conflict. As bombings intensify and hope dwindles, Amal's extraordinary abilities are put to the ultimate test. With time running out and lives hanging in the balance, Hassan must confront impossible choices. Will their bond be enough to overcome the horrors of war and redefine what it means to be human?
The early morning silence was shattered by the distant rumble of explosions. Hassan sighed, his weathered hands gripping the shovel tighter. Another day, another grave to dig. The war had been raging for months, turning his once vibrant city into a place of constant unease. As the city's gravedigger, Hassan had become intimately acquainted with the cost of conflict. He walked through the streets, nodding solemnly to the few residents brave enough to venture out, their eyes reflecting a mix of resignation and resilience. Reaching the outskirts of the city, Hassan surveyed the scene of the latest airstrike. Buildings stood damaged but not destroyed, a testament to the city's endurance. Rescue workers were already combing through the affected area, their voices carrying on the wind. Hassan's job would come later, after hope had faded. He moved towards the designated burial ground, his steps heavy with the weight of his responsibility. The war might rage on, but Hassan would ensure that those lost would have a dignified rest. As he began to dig, a flurry of movement caught his eye. A street dog, lean and alert, was pawing frantically at a pile of rubble nearby. Hassan paused, wiping sweat from his brow. He had seen many dogs roaming the city since the war began, but something about this one's determination gave him pause. The dog, a female with a distinctive white patch on her chest, whinnied urgently, her eyes darting between Hassan and the rubble. Curiosity overcame caution, and Hassan set down his shovel. He approached the pile, the dog's excitement growing with each step. As he drew closer, he heard it. A faint cry, muffled but unmistakably human. His heart raced as he began to dig alongside the dog, calling out to the rescue workers. Within minutes, they uncovered a young boy, scared but alive. As the child was whisked away for medical attention, Hassan looked at the dog with newfound respect. In that moment, surrounded by the echoes of war, an idea began to take shape in his mind. Life on the streets of the war-torn city had never been easy for Amar. Born under the chassis of an abandoned car, she had learned to navigate the urban landscape with a mix of caution and cunning. The war had changed everything, turning familiar alleys into treacherous mazes of debris and danger. Yet Amar had adapted, her keen senses attuned to the rhythms of a city under siege. She had found a pack, a ragtag group of strays united by the common goal of survival. Together, they scavenged for food and shelter, always alert for the telltale whistle of incoming shells. The day of the airstrike dawned like any other. Amar led her pack through their usual route, noses to the ground in search of anything edible. The first explosion caught them off guard, the ground shaking beneath their paws. Panic set in as buildings crumbled and dust filled the air. In the chaos, Amar lost sight of her pack. She ran, driven by instinct, her heart pounding in time with the falling bombs. When the dust settled, she found herself alone in an unfamiliar part of the city, the acrid smell of smoke burning her nostrils. Disoriented and afraid, Amar wandered the streets. The familiar sounds of the city were replaced by an eerie silence, broken only by distant shouts and the occasional rumble of collapsing structures. Her keen nose picked up a myriad of scents: fear, smoke, blood, but one scent stood out. It was faint but distinct. A human, alive but trapped. Without fully understanding why, Amal felt compelled to follow it. Her street-honed instincts, once focused solely on survival, now drove her towards something new: purpose. As she approached a pile of rubble, the scent grew stronger. Amal began to dig, her paws scraping against broken concrete and twisted metal. She whined, frustrated by her inability to reach the source of the scent. That's when she saw him, the gravedigger. Amal had seen him before, a solitary figure moving through the city's quiet places. Now, he represented hope. She barked, trying to catch his attention, willing him to understand. As he approached, Amal redoubled her efforts, sensing that together they might achieve what she could not, alone. Hassan couldn't shake the memory of the rescue. The image of the street dog, whom he had started calling Amal, meaning hope in Arabic, digging tirelessly at the rubble, played on repeat in his mind. He had always viewed the city's strays as unfortunate victims of the war, but now he saw potential. With their keen senses and agility, dogs like Amal could access areas too dangerous or cramped for human rescuers. The idea took root, growing stronger with each passing hour. By nightfall, Hassan had made his decision. He would train these street dogs to become rescuers. The next morning, Hassan sought out Dr. Layla, the local veterinarian who had managed to keep her clinic running despite the war. He found her tending to her injured cat, her gentle hands a stark contrast to the harsh realities outside. Hassan explained his idea, his words tumbling out in a rush of excitement and urgency. Dr. Layla listened, her expression shifting from skepticism to cautious interest. "It's ambitious," she said finally, "and risky. But if it works..." She didn't need to finish the thought. In a city where hope was in short supply, any chance to save lives was worth pursuing. Together, Hassan and Dr. Layla began to plan. They would need to gather supplies, create training areas, and most importantly, earn the trust of the street dogs. Hassan's knowledge of the city's quiet spaces would be invaluable in finding safe locations for training. Dr. Layla's medical expertise would ensure that dogs remained healthy and cared for. As they talked, the challenges seemed to multiply. How to feed the dogs? How to protect them from skeptics, who might see them as a drain on resources? How to convince others to support their unorthodox rescue team? As dusk fell, Hassan made his way home, his mind buzzing with possibilities and potential pitfalls. The sound of distant explosions reminded him of the urgency of their task. He paused, looking out over the city skyline, altered but not broken by war. A movement caught his eye. Amal, watching him from a nearby alley. Hassan smiled, feeling a surge of determination. Tomorrow, they would begin. In a world torn apart by conflict, he and these resilient animals would forge a new purpose, turning instruments of survival into tools of hope. Certainly. I'll continue with the next 3 chapters of the story, maintaining the structure and guidelines you've provided. Weeks of training had transformed the ragtag group of street dogs into a disciplined rescue unit. Hassan watched with pride as Amal led her canine team through a series of drills, their noses twitching as they sought out volunteers hidden among piles of rubble. Dr. Layla stood beside him, her clipboard filled with notes on each dog's progress. "They're ready," she said, her voice a mix of excitement and apprehension. Hassan nodded, knowing that all their preparation would soon be put to the ultimate test. The call came at dawn. A residential building on the outskirts of the city had been hit. Hassan's heart raced as he gathered the dogs, their eager whines filling the air. Arriving at the scene, they were met with chaos. Dust hung thick in the air, punctuated by the shouts of frantic family members and the mechanical growl of rescue equipment. Hassan took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. With a nod to Dr. Layla, he gave the command they had practiced countless times. Search. Amar took the lead, her nose to the ground as she wove through the debris. The other dogs fanned out, each focused on their training. Hassan followed close behind, his eyes scanning for any sign of movement. Minutes stretched into hours, the sun climbing higher in the sky as they searched. Suddenly, Amal's bark cut through the air, sharp, insistent. Hassan's pulse quickened as he scrambled towards her, hope and fear warring in his chest. There, in a pocket of space beneath a fallen wall, lay a family of 4, unconscious but alive. As rescue workers rushed to extricate them, Hassan knelt beside Amal, his hands shaking as he stroked her dusty fur. "Good girl," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Around them, the atmosphere had shifted. Skeptical stares had turned to looks of awe and gratitude. In that moment, as the first survivors were carried to safety, Hassan knew their unlikely experiment had become something much more, a beacon of hope in their war-torn world. Word of the successful rescue spread quickly through the city. Hassan and Dr. Layla found themselves inundated with offers of support and requests for help. The makeshift training ground behind Hassan's house was soon bustling with activity. More street dogs were brought in, eager volunteers arrived to assist with training, and even some of the city's officials came to observe. But with growth came new challenges. Feeding the expanding team of dogs strained their limited resources, and the increased activity drew unwanted attention from those who saw the program as a frivolous use of time and supplies. Commander Rashid, the gruff leader of the local militia, was among the skeptics. He arrived unannounced one afternoon, his hard gaze taking in the scene before him. "Impressive trick," he said, watching as Amar successfully located a volunteer hidden in a mock collapse. "But how can you justify this when we can barely feed our own people?" Hassan felt a flicker of doubt, but stood his ground. He invited the commander to stay and observe a full training session, hoping that seeing the dogs in action would change his mind. As the commander watched, Hassan and Dr. Layla grappled with the practicalities of their growing operation. Medical supplies for the dogs were running low, and several of the new recruits were showing signs of malnourishment. Dr. Layla worked tirelessly, stretching her veterinary skills to the limit. Hassan spent his evenings scouring the city for food and supplies, often returning home exhausted but determined. Despite the hardships, neither of them considered giving up. The memory of the family they had saved fueled their resolve. One evening, as Hassan was distributing meager portions of food to the dogs, Amal approached him. She gently took her share, then nudged the bowl towards a younger, weaker dog. Hassan watched, struck by the simple act of compassion. In that moment, he realized that their project was about more than just rescues. It was about preserving humanity in the face of war's dehumanizing force. With renewed determination, he turned to face the challenges ahead, Amal a steadfast presence by his side. The early morning calm was shattered by a series of explosions that rocked the city. Hassan jolted awake, his heart pounding as he rushed to gather the rescue team. Reports were coming in of multiple buildings hit, with dozens potentially trapped. As they raced towards the affected area, Hassan knew this would be their biggest test yet. The dogs, sensing the urgency, were unusually quiet, their eyes alert and focused. Amar, as always, led the pack, her posture radiating a determination that bolstered her son's own resolve. Arriving at the scene, they were met with a landscape of devastation far worse than anything they had encountered before. Smoke billowed from several buildings, and the air was filled with the sounds of sirens and desperate cries for help. Hassan quickly divided the team, assigning each group to a different section of the affected area. As he watched Amal and her group move out, a gnawing worry settled in his stomach. The scale of destruction meant they would be stretched thin, forced to make difficult choices about where to focus their efforts. Hours into the rescue operation, Hassan received word of a potential survivor detected in a building on the outskirts of the blast zone. He gathered Amal and a small team to investigate, knowing time was of the essence. As they approached the site, Amal suddenly froze, her nose twitching rapidly. She let out a low whine, her gaze torn between the building ahead and a distant pile of rubble to their left. Hassan recognized the signs. She had caught another scent, potentially another survivor. In that moment, Hassan faced a heart-rending decision. The confirmed survivor ahead needed immediate help, but Amal's instincts had proven invaluable time and again. As he hesitated, Amal looked up at him, her eyes seeming to plead for understanding. With a heavy heart, Hassan made his choice. "Go," he whispered to Amal, watching as she took off towards the distant rubble. He turned to lead the rest of the team towards the known survivor, praying that Amal's instincts would prove right once again, and that his decision wouldn't cost a life. Certainly, I'll continue with the next 3 chapters of the story, maintaining the established structure and guidelines. The city held its breath as rescue efforts stretched into the night. Hassan coordinated tirelessly, his voice hoarse from shouting instructions over the din of emergency vehicles and crumbling debris. Amal's decision had led to the discovery of a group of children trapped in a collapsed basement, turning what could have been a tragedy into a miracle. As news of the rescue spread, the mood shifted. Even the most hardened skeptics found it difficult to argue with results. Commander Rashid arrived on the scene, his face etched with a mixture of awe and disbelief. He watched as Amal fearlessly navigated unstable structures, her acute sense of smell guiding rescuers to survivors who would have otherwise remained undetected. "I was wrong," he admitted to Hassan, his gruff voice tinged with respect. "Your dogs, they're not just animals, they're heroes." The commander's change of heart marked a turning point. With his influence, doors began to open, bringing much-needed resources and support to the program. As dawn broke, casting a pale light over the ravaged cityscape, Hassan noticed something extraordinary about Amal's behavior. She moved with purpose between different areas, her nose working overtime. It soon became clear that she wasn't just finding survivors. She was differentiating between the living and the deceased. This grim but crucial ability allowed the rescue teams to focus their efforts where they were needed most, saving precious time and resources. Dr. Layla, who had been providing medical support throughout the night, was astounded by Amal's newfound skill. "It's unprecedented," she marveled, watching Amal work. "She's not just finding people, she's triaging." Hassan felt a surge of pride mixed with a deep sense of responsibility. They had unlocked something remarkable in these street dogs, transforming them from survivors into saviors. As the rescue operation wound down, Hassan knew that their work was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. In the weeks following the major rescue operation, Hassan and Dr. Layla found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of attention. News of the heroic street dogs had spread beyond the city, catching the interest of international aid organizations and media outlets. Donations began to pour in food, medical supplies, and even specialized rescue equipment. The influx of resources was a blessing, but it also brought new challenges. Hassan struggled to manage the growing operation while staying true to its roots. Not everyone welcomed the program's newfound fame. Some residents, grappling with their own war-induced hardships, viewed the attention lavished on the dogs with resentment. How can we justify feeding strays when children go hungry? The whispers grew louder, fueled by fear and scarcity. Hassan and Dr. Layla knew they needed to address these concerns. Hidden, they organized community meetings, inviting skeptics to voice their worries and see the dogs in action. Slowly but surely, minds began to change. Amal, now the unspoken star of the program, played a crucial role in winning hearts. Her gentle demeanor and obvious intelligence helped bridge the gap between human and canine. Children who had once feared the street dogs now begged to help with training exercises. Even former critics found themselves won over by Amal's soulful eyes and unwavering dedication. Hassan watched with pride as the community began to rally around the program, recognizing the dogs not as a burden, but as a symbol of resilience and hope. As support grew, so did the scope of their work. The dogs were now being trained not just for rescue operations, but for a variety of tasks to aid the war-affected community. Some learned to detect unexploded ordnance, while others were trained to provide comfort to traumatized survivors. Hassan marveled at how far they had come from that first moment of inspiration. The city was still at war, but in the midst of conflict, they had created something beautiful, a testament to the enduring power of compassion and the unexpected heroes that can emerge in the darkest of times. The wail of sirens pierced the pre-dawn quiet, jolting Hassan from a fitful sleep. His phone buzzed incessantly, multiple messages reporting a missile strike on the city's main hospital. His blood ran cold. The hospital was not just a building. It was the lifeline of their war-torn community. As he raced to gather the rescue team, Hassan's mind whirled with the magnitude of what they were about to face. This wasn't just another rescue mission. It was a fight for the heart of their city. Arriving at the scene, Hassan's worst fears were confirmed. The hospital's east wing had taken a direct hit, its structure a mangled mess of concrete and steel. Smoke billowed from shattered windows, and the air was thick with dust and the acrid smell of explosives. Nurses and doctors, some injured themselves, worked frantically to evacuate patients from the intact sections. Hassan took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. He turned to his team, human and canine alike, seeing the same determination reflected in their eyes. "This is what we've trained for," Hassan addressed the group, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "There are hundreds of lives at stake. We need to be swift, but careful." He outlined the plan. The dogs would be sent in first to locate survivors, followed by human rescuers. The most challenging area would be the collapsed east wing, where the structure was most unstable. Hassan hesitated, knowing the extreme danger. But Amar stepped forward, her posture resolute. She had proven time and again that she could navigate where humans couldn't. With a heavy heart, Hassan gave her the go-ahead. Hassan disappeared into the rubble. Hassan coordinated the rest of the team. Every minute counted. Reports came in rapidly. Survivors found in the pediatric ward. A group of staff trapped in the basement. Patients still in the ICU needing immediate evacuation. The dogs worked tirelessly, their barks guiding rescuers to those in need. But as the hours wore on, Hassan's worry grew. There was no sign of Amal. The east wing groaned ominously, threatening further collapse. Just as Hassan was about to call off the search in that section, a faint bark echoed from deep within the rubble. Amal had found someone. The race against time reached a fever pitch. Certainly. I'll continue with the final 3 chapters of the story, maintaining the established structure and guidelines. The faint sound of Amal's bark galvanized the rescue team into action. Hassan's heart raced as he coordinated a careful approach to the unstable east wing. Engineers quickly assessed the structure, their faces grim as they pointed out the areas most likely to collapse. "We have minutes, not hours," one of them warned. Hassan nodded, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. He called for volunteers, knowing the risk they were asking people to take. To his surprise, hands shot up immediately. The community's faith in Amal and the rescue dogs was absolute. As the rescue team carefully made their way into the rubble, guided by the intermittent sound of Amal's barks, Hassan remained outside, coordinating efforts and relaying information. Each passing minute felt like an eternity. Suddenly, a series of sharp cracks echoed from within the structure. Hassan's blood ran cold as he watched a section of the wall start to give way. "Get out!" he shouted into his radio, his voice cracking with panic. In the chaos that followed, rescuers scrambled to safety, but there was no sign of Amal or the survivors she had found. Dust settled over the scene, an eerie silence replacing the previous frenzy of activity. Hassan stood frozen, his mind refusing to accept what his eyes were telling him. Dr. Layla appeared at his side, her hand on his shoulder a small comfort in the face of overwhelming loss. "We can't give up," she said softly, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. Hassan nodded mechanically, but the hope that had driven him for so long felt like it was slipping away. How could they continue without Amal, the heart and soul of their team? As the rescue workers regrouped, discussing how to safely approach the now even more dangerous site, a sound cut through the somber atmosphere. It was faint, barely audible, but unmistakable, a whimper. Hassan's head snapped up, his eyes scanning the rubble desperately. There it was again, slightly stronger this time. "She's alive," he breathed, a spark of hope reigniting in his chest. But with hope came a chilling realization. Amal was trapped, along with whoever she had found. They were running out of time, and the most dangerous part of the rescue was yet to come. With renewed determination, Hassan rallied the rescue team. "We're not leaving anyone behind," he declared, his voice carrying across the debris-strewn area. Engineers quickly devised a plan to stabilize the most precarious sections, allowing for a careful approach to where they believed Amal and the survivors to be trapped. Every available hand was put to work, forming a human chain to carefully remove rubble piece by piece. The entire city seemed to hold its breath as the rescue operation unfolded. As they dug, Hassan found himself thinking back to the day he first met Amal. How her determination had inspired this entire journey. Now, her life hung in the balance, along with those she had risked everything to save. The irony wasn't lost on him. The rescuer now needed rescuing, but with each passing moment, the sounds from within the rubble grew stronger. Amal's whimpers were now accompanied by human voices, weak but unmistakable. They were close. Suddenly, a shout went up from the rescue team. They had breached the pocket of space where Amal and the survivors were trapped. Hassan rushed forward, his heart in his throat. There, in a small cavity created by fallen beams, lay Amal. She She was battered and bleeding, but her tail wagged weakly at the sight of her son. Beside her were 3 children, huddled close to the dog that had become their lifeline. As medical teams moved in to assess and extract the survivors, Hassan knelt beside Amal, tears streaming down his face. "You did it, Go," he whispered. "You're the bravest of us all." The rescue of Amal and the children became the turning point of the hospital crisis. Inspired by their heroism, the community rallied. Volunteers poured in, working tirelessly alongside professional rescue teams. As the sun began to set, the last of the survivors was pulled from the rubble. The hospital, though damaged, had not been defeated. As Amal was carefully transported to Dr. Layla's clinic for treatment, Hassan looked out over the scene. Amidst the destruction, he saw something beautiful. A city united, its spirit unbroken. They had faced their darkest hour and emerged stronger. In the weeks following the hospital crisis, the city began the long process of healing and rebuilding. The rescue dog program, once viewed with skepticism, was now hailed as a vital part of the community's resilience. Hassan found himself at the center of a movement that stretched far beyond their city borders. Requests poured in from other conflict zones, asking for guidance on starting similar programs. The dogs that had once been seen as strays were now recognized as heroes, their story a beacon of hope in troubled times. Amal's recovery was slow but steady, mirroring the city's own journey of reconstruction. Her injuries meant she could no longer participate in active rescues, but her role evolved. She became a symbol of the program, her presence alone inspiring confidence and comfort. Hassan watched with pride as she gently interacted with traumatized survivors, her calm demeanor a balm to troubled souls. In her twilight years, Amal had found a new purpose, one just as vital as her days as a rescuer. As life settled into a new normal, Hassan reflected on the incredible journey they had undertaken. What had started as a desperate attempt to save lives had blossomed into something far greater, a testament to the indomitable spirit of both humans and animals in the face of adversity. The war had taken much from them, but it had also revealed strengths they never knew they possessed. Hassan looked out over the city, its skyline forever changed, but its heart stronger than ever. The sound of playful barks drew Hassan's attention. In the training yard behind his house, a new generation of rescue dogs was beginning their journey. Among them were Amal's own puppies, born in the midst of reconstruction, carrying forward their mother's legacy. As Hassan watched them train, guided by volunteers from the community, he felt a profound sense of hope. The future was uncertain, the specter of war still loomed, but they were prepared. Together, human and canine, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, bound by compassion, courage, and an unwavering determination to preserve life in the darkest of times.